And you're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning, and it is a good morning, and we just thought we'd let that song run.
Well, that's a good excuse.
We just thought we'd let that. It had nothing to do with us connecting late or anything like that. It was just...
Of course not.
No. But we do like the song. We do like to listen to the song. Anyway, good morning, Melody, and good morning, America.
Good morning to you, and good morning to everyone.
So... Go ahead.
I guess the big news and the big talk was all about the dinner last night. Right. Did you watch?
I watched part of it late. I saw where I can't ever pronounce his name. Bethron, is that how you say his name? Made his toast.
Oh, you're talking about him. Okay.
Oh, what were you talking about? Macron. Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Many of them.
I didn't even have his name right. Okay, Macron. When he was making his.
If you listen to him, they pronounce his name with the N, and even everybody will say it's Macron. But I usually when you hear a real Frenchy person say it, they don't pronounce the N. Macron.
Oh, so it's Macron. Macron. Do you know? Macron. Okay. Got it. Anyway, I did watch it. I didn't catch that. I just stopped it. Stop it. Okay, so I did watch the toast that he did late last night, but I didn't see everything else. But I was running around yesterday afternoon and didn't get home till late. Had to make some phone calls, and then hubby took over the TV and he was watching the St. Louis Cardinals, and they ended up losing. So I was watching things late then.
Well, there was the one thing I wanted to see was who was the list of attendees. I have yet to see the complete list, but those that I did, and I did have some questions, and I thought, well, how curious. You don't hear much about Vice President Mike Pence anymore. I mean, he really has gone into the shadows,
he's now in his defense.
No, I'm not doing any argument. It's just an observation.
But he's been doing some of the traveling that President Donald Trump didn't do because he stayed here because we were in a crisis over this or over that. And
well, Ivanka went down to those Latin American meetings.
Yes.
But I know Pence was supposed to go, but I don't know if she went along or she replaced Pence. I don't know. I never followed up on this story. But anyway, he was there with his lovely wife, and she is, she's very sweet, yes. Chief Justice John Roberts. I thought, I wonder why he was there and not the rest of the justices. Although I don't have a complete list, I was just curious as why he would show up and none of the others. Or maybe they did, but in the article that at least I could find the names, he was the only one listed. Now, this is a name I thought was interesting. Henry Kissinger was there.
Okay.
Rupert was there. And, of course, Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News. So, again, you can see the relationship that they're building. And, of course, when you listen to Fox News, I mean, they are 100% pro-Trump.
Well, not all of them. Not all.
Well, 99%.
Yeah, perhaps. Sometimes I think they say it, but they're not really it. Kind of like when Megyn Kelly was there. She never said she was for Trump, but she claimed to be a conservative, and she never really was truly a conservative.
And she's no longer there, so I think the other
that was her choice.
I think the others learned their lesson. You had Apple CEO Tim Cook there. And, of course, he took a big meeting with President Trump, I don't know, before or after, this big dinner and so forth. So, again, it's just so much of the same. And it was real interesting this morning. There was something else I observed during that dinner, but I want to say this first. This morning I was actually watching MSNBC, and they had this professor on from Columbia University, I believe. And there was two things he was talking about. First, he was talking about Syria. And now this is MSNBC, and they were talking about Syria, and he comes out and says, well, back in 2011 you had the CIA and you had the surrounding fractions, the leaders that created the situation in Syria. So he came out and that's the first time I heard on mainstream media. I mean, every once in a while, maybe on Fox, maybe they did and so forth, or they just at least blamed Obama or whatever. But he came out and said the CIA. And he says, we really do need to leave. He was in support of Trump leaving and everything, and, he went on in detail. But I was a little surprised. And this was on MSNBC. This was where I was shocked.
And that was who?
He was a professor from, I don't recall his name, but he was a professor from Columbia University, and they were interviewing him on Syria. And then he also talked about the corruption in D.C. He says, because they were talking about Mulvaney's statement that he made, that he doesn't talk to the lobbyists who don't pay him. He only talks to the lobbyists who do give him money. And they were discussing this, and this professor from Columbia University says, well, we have the most corrupt government in the world. He says, we have legalized.
He's probably listening to CSU Talk Radio.
He says, we have legalized the corruption from the lobbyists. We legalized it.
I think he's right.
He says we've legalized the corruption, the payments from the lobbyists, from the multinational corporations. He says we have the most corrupt government in the world. But
I agree.
Right.
I believe we do.
Yeah. But coming from MSNBC, I was shocked. And, of course, they didn't allow him to elaborate much more on that. But,
they think it's true, but they think it's since President Donald Trump became president. They don't want to believe that it's been decades and decades building.
Decades, yeah. But another thing I observed at the dinner last night, if you noticed at the place settings, beautiful place settings, and the dinnerware was from both administrations of Clinton and Bush, and beautiful settings with the flowers. She did a great job in the decorations. But the wine glasses, the water glasses, they all had about a 2-inch, maybe an inch and a half, maybe an inch, rim of gold. There was a gold pattern going around the top of the stemware.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful. But there was one...
Can't put those in the microwave.
But there was one glass that did not... No, I'm being... There was one glass... May I finish? There was one glass that did not have the rim. Out of all the glasses, and when I saw it, I don't know why I observed stuff like that. It was President Trump's.
His probably did not have alcohol in it. I watched that last night because he does not drink alcohol at all. I wonder if he had apple juice or some kind of a seltzer or something, or a spritzer.
He would pour it in the same glass. I mean, there just wasn't wine glasses. There were water glasses. All the stemware. I mean, it wasn't just one glass on the table for wine. There was multiple glasses. But I was thinking more for poisoning, that they monitored what he drinks and they keep it in a special glass or something.
Oh, that may be.
To keep...
Make sure which ones...
to make sure that it was going directly to him. And so it was a separate glass to which they could tell from all the other glasses. So
that's interesting. That reminds me of a movie. I know. I'm not trying to make light of it, because I did think when he was doing the toast, I know that he doesn't drink, but I didn't watch it long enough to observe what you observed. I only saw a little snippet of it, and it was when Macron was making his toast, and of course he'd say a little bit, and then the interpreter, he'd kind of nod, and the interpreter would say what he'd said, and then he'd do another little bit, and then she'd repeat, interpret what he was saying. But I didn't observe the glasses, and that is very interesting. And it could be for what you said, but I was thinking more of the first thing that popped in my mind is he doesn't drink alcohol. So it might have been this is the one to put the non-alcoholic beverage in, but you may be correct. You may be absolutely correct. But it was an old comedy with Danny Kaye, and he was supposed to remember which one of the containers didn't have the poison, and it was the vessel with the pestle, and then it was the I can't remember what they all were, but he had a little rhyme that he had to memorize, and he was doing that as he was walking. The vessel with the pestle has the brew that is true. Anyway, I was being a smart aleck. I'm sorry, but
no, that's fine. That's fine. But I wanted to see the complete list of people who showed up. But, again, all I needed to see was Murdoch and Kissinger. And,
Kissinger.
It's just, I mean, it's the same. It's
same people,
same
people. Faces.
Mm-hmm. When people talk about the deep state, those are the leaders. So, just like Rand Paul yesterday, he was going to not vote for Pompeo.
But he did.
He got a phone call from President Trump, and he got his orders. You vote, okay. So, I mean, it's just like, these are little things, and most of the world probably doesn't even pay attention to this stuff, but, I find it very interesting.
It is interesting, but I'm going to go back to something you had said several months ago about things that the president is doing that nobody's talking about. And here's another one, and this is on the good side, and this is coming from the Daily Signal. And it says the Senate confirms the Neil Gorsuch of Louisiana. Gorsuch. Louisiana. Okay, I said Gorsuch. Don't put the goblets in the microwave. Okay, Neil Gorsuch of Louisiana to high-ranking federal bench. It says the Senate voted 50-47 on Tuesday to confirm an all-star appellate lawyer, Kyle Duncan, to the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Duncan is President Donald Trump's 15th Circuit Court nominee to be confirmed since taking office. He's dubbed by the Louisiana Attorney General, Jeff Landry, as the Neil Gorsuch of Louisiana. Duncan is currently a lawyer in private practice. He has argued more than 30 cases in federal appellate court, including 2 before the Supreme Court. It says previously, Duncan served as Louisiana's first Solicitor General or appellate chief, as general counsel of the Beckett Fund, a national recognized public interest law firm, and as a law professor at the University of Mississippi Law School. After entering private practice, he continued to advance Louisiana's interests by defending the state's laws on marriage and abortion and religious liberty. So, that was something you had mentioned several months ago, that people aren't paying attention to these judges that hopefully will be good judges. We already know that Gorsuch kind of let us down on one ruling here a week ago. But anyway, I thought that was interesting, and it made me think of you right away when I read that, because you said so. You said so.
It is interesting and to see those judges, because they're conservative, and, they'll play a very important part for a very long time. And so, I think that is important. And, so
we know how much trouble the Ninth Circuit Court has given the president. And so, these are important there. And, I thought it was interesting that it was a 50-47. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. I really don't know how many judges there are, and whether, how many are liberals, and how many. It'd be interesting to, find out if there's, 800 conservatives versus 800, liberals on these courts and so forth.
Interesting. Well, I hear music, so we're headed into a break. I do have something else to share when we get back, and I know that you probably have some financial news on gold and silver and what's happening and what has been happening this week. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. The number to call is 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. And Melody and Beth Ann, we'll be right back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a reestablished Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Howard Thomas, Melanie and Beth Ann in the morning. I have an article here. I don't know which one to share first. I'm going to share this one first. This is, about Crummy Pelosi, because Pelosi made her little comment about the crumbs. It's kind of like let them eat cake. And a student at Georgetown University confronted her, and he asked her about that and I thought this was kind of a crazy statement because it hasn't gone on long enough to have felt this big an impact. But he says on a macroeconomic level, the economy's growing, wages are rising for the first time in years. Would you still refer to the effects of this tax plan on average Americans as crumbs? Now, that doesn't say everything that he said in the he said, as the son of a small business owner, I know that it's helped my parents hire more employees. It's helped us pay off our mortgage and helped put me through college. Now, it's only took effect when? It was just this year. It can't have done all of that just yet, really? Can it have? I know people are seeing a little extra in their paycheck, but to claim it's helped us pay off our mortgage, it's paid for my college, and it's done this and done that, well, they must be getting a lot more back than other people are. But anyway, he approached Pelosi, and she went off on, did you know that 83% of the benefits of the tax bill are at the top 1%, and 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, you know how she repeats herself. And she says, in the life of the bill, 86 million people, middle-class families will pay more taxes. She started throwing out numbers. $200 billion were taken from this, $200 million were taken from that, and taken from this, and she's just throwing those numbers out there. And, of course, she was talking about all the entitlements that they're taking it away from. They're from Medicaid and from Medicare, and she was going on, and you know how she talks. Anyway, I thought it was kind of, both sides I thought were kind of out there, because I don't see that the tax cut could have possibly done all that this young man said it had done in this short a period of time. Did it take place in the 1st of February or January? I can't remember, but it's only been a quarter, a little more than a quarter, so it couldn't have paid off their mortgages and paid his college and done everything that they were claiming that it had done.
Well, I mean, a lot of the earnings that are coming out is all based on, for the first quarter, is based on those tax reforms for these corporations. So it does have an impact, you know, because a lot of these corporations pay quarterly. So you do have an impact to some degree, and people who pay quarterly, if they're getting benefits, or that, you know, that they could actually have impacts. So on the other hand, too, you know, the little guy who doesn't do quarterlies isn't going to see, you know, he might see an adjustment in his paycheck, but it's not going to be that much to do anything significant, especially when we have, again, credit card debt that is at record highs for families, and you also have gasoline prices rising and everything else rising. So these little tax cuts for, you know, the middle class family, I mean, it's not going to do much for them at all. Say, it'll probably, they certainly aren't going to be able to do their taxes on a postcard and mail it. So they're still going to have to, you know, see accountants and so forth and whatnot. So and that's why, you know, again, you know, it's an illusion that has been created, thinking that these tax reforms and so forth have been, doesn't matter who they're beneficial for, really is just a lot of pie in the, you know, it's been very, very helpful for banks. The banks are receiving record profits, so let's deregulate them even more. I mean, it's just, you know, crazy. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I can't imagine it's going to be a good scenario. But
no, but it's not because of that particular thing. It's because of how they've been running this country. It's because of the lack of the gold standard behind our, you know, the dollars are just their fiat money and they have no backing. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. And, you know, but Pelosi to get up and say what she was saying, I don't believe a word anything that woman says.
No, I don't either.
Anyway.
I don't either.
But
and really the tax reform.
In one quarter, that his parents have been able to hire more people and pay off their mortgage and put him through college. And I'm thinking, well, they did pretty good in one quarter.
The tax reform is nothing but a stimulus for the economy.
Exactly.
Because our economy is not doing well, and you're not going to have a trickle down. We've already, even you know, with these you know, so much for the repatriation and the corporation savings. 2/3 of it is going to shareholders and buybacks. 1/3 of it is going to purchase equipment. Mm-hmm. Very little of it is going to get down to the little guy that's working. But the little guy, he might be able to go work for Bernie Sanders. Because yesterday Bernie Sanders came out, we talked about this on the 4 o'clock show a little bit, is set to announce a federal jobs proposal that would guarantee a job with at least $15 per hour wage and health benefits to every adult American who wants or needs one. The senator is still in the early stages, of course. There wasn't a plan that was actually, produced, but his plan would provide a job or required training for any American. Again, the details have not been released. The Vermont senator joins 2 other possible 2020 contenders. He is one of the most popular Democratic politicians. I mean, people love him, even though in 2020 he's going to be 79. Hey, the kids love him. The millennials love him. And now that he's offering a guaranteed job that'll pay at least $15 per hour and health benefits to every American, kind of warms your heart. Warms your heart, doesn't it?
It's right here. It's right here. It's right here.
I know. Oh my.
I had something else I wanted to share, but we're going to go to Joe in Arkansas. Joe, how are you today?
Oh, I'm still getting by. How are you all?
I'm getting by too.
Yeah, okay. Well, I tell you, I would be in favor of Bernie Sanders' plan if he can show how those jobs are going to produce a profitable product so that the program will pay for itself, so that it won't be subsidized by the taxpayers. If he can do that, I would be for such a program. But that's not what I don't think he can do that. But that's not what
because you're missing the word that he calls a federal jobs proposal. So anything federal is
or government jobs. That's what we need.
Yeah, the federal government isn't known for producing profitable products, is it?
But if they do, they lie about it.
They sure do. Yeah, what I wanted to talk about was a point where I see that the conservatives are doing the same sort of short-sighted thinking on one economic issue that they accuse the liberals of doing on another economic issue, and that's this. You know, the conservatives are always for tax cuts because, okay, the liberals don't like tax cuts. They don't want tax cuts because they say this is going to decrease the revenue to the government. We can't afford to have these tax cuts. And so the conservatives, you know, very rightly, I think, point out that, no, the economy is not a static thing where the pie is only so big, and if the government doesn't get this much of it, you know, they're going to lose revenue. The pie is not a static thing, like these liberals can seem to conceive it to be. But if we have tax cuts, it's going to stimulate so much more economic activity and cause so much more hiring and generate so many more jobs and so much more productivity and so on like this, that the tax base is going to grow. So even at a lower tax rate, the government will actually get more revenue, and that the record of history clearly shows that that's what happens. And I think they're right on that. So that's what the conservatives say on that issue. But when it comes to tariffs on imports, you know, all the conservatives say is it's going to raise the price of everything. And so, and they leave it there as if, you know, that's all that's going to happen, and so that we're going to be paying more for everything, and so that we're going to be, you know, less well off, you know, because of that. But what they don't see is that if we have tariffs on the imports and buy the stuff from ourselves instead, then we're not going to have the money draining out of the country. We're going to keep the money here and keep the money circulating in this country, so that money will generate more jobs and more economic activity and so on like that. And I think the record of history clearly shows that because we have so much more economic activity within this country when we have the tariffs on imports and when we buy more things from ourselves instead of from other countries, by keeping that money in the country and circulating the money in the country, the economy becomes so much more prosperous that we can easily afford the somewhat higher prices of things. And so I think the conservatives are showing the same sort of short-sighted thinking on that issue that they accuse the liberals of showing on the issue of the taxes. And I know that Mark Levin says that we don't need to worry about trade deficits because trade deficits show that we have a strong economy. We have such a strong economy that we can afford those huge trade deficits. And, you know, and this to me is crazy. I think what those trade deficits are showing is that we're running up a huge monster debt that gets bigger and bigger all the time because we're draining all the money out of the country, buying stuff from foreign countries, and so then we have to run the economy on borrowing so that we have something, so that we have some money here to spend, you know, to spend on the stuff from other countries. And that if we didn't have those huge trade deficits, we wouldn't have to borrow so much money. We wouldn't have to run such a huge deficit because we'd keep the money circulating inside this country instead of draining it out of the country. So I wanted to make that comment on those on that economic issue.
the one thing about the deficits, I mean, Mark Levin, he's right to some degree. You can have a deficit with a good economy, but that's not where our deficits are coming from. These deficits are not being created because of a great economy, and that's the difference. And they can't define what a good economy is or a bad economy is, because they don't want to go any deeper into looking at the economy and see where the problems really lie. So yeah, you can have good deficits and bad deficits, and I think the deficits that we have now are not beneficial. We've exported our inflation, and that's what we've gotten from these from these big deficits. And anytime you have more money spending, circulating in this country, you're going to have greater inflation. And the problem with that is that doesn't necessarily mean wages are going to rise to offset the rise in inflation. Wages aren't going to increase the way they used to. There's reasons, strong economic reasons why we won't see the wages increase to offset these inflations. Not until we have a currency that is backed by something that will keep the inflation at bay and to keep government from spending. And sure, we can have increased revenue from the tax cuts, but hey, they just passed a spending bill, $1.3 trillion. There's no cuts in there. You can't continue to steal from the American people and not cut spending in any manner. They want to come in and they want to take away from the Social Security. I mean, they have already robbed it and placed IOUs in it. Instead of spending all the money on stupid things, maybe they ought to replace the money in Social Security so the people who put money in there will still get their Social Security or get some of the money back that they put in there. So, I mean, again, we're back to the corruption of this country, of this government. And everybody has their own little piece of pie that they're trying to defend instead of really looking at the problems and fixing the problem. They're just creating Band-Aids. And you might get a temporary breath here and there that might say, hey, this might work, and we can get all excited, we can get all pumped up about it, but on a long-term basis, it's not going to work because they're not fixing they're just Band-Aiding it. And they've created this illusion, and we've fallen into this thing. Well, we don't see the food lines. Gasoline is still affordable to some degree, and but hey, look at healthcare. Look at some of these other big problems that we have. So how much can the people pay? How can they continue to see these increased taxes? And then I hear the arguments, oh, well, we really don't pay that much in tax, and, we still have the pretty low tax rate. Well, you know what? You start figuring in all the other taxes that we get hit on.
Yeah. Figure in your state tax and all your county taxes and
your county taxes, and even Clinton says it's not going to be long before we're paying 80%. Was it 80% or 80? Some ridiculous number.
Well, they were trying to get it up to that. President Barack Obama wanted to get it up to and that was in his first term, where he was talking about getting us up to a tax rate, that was similar to Europe, where they pay I don't know if it's 76 or 86%.
Yeah, but they don't pay health care. They might pay $8 for a cup of coffee, but that's true socialism. I mean, they do pay those high taxes, but they are.
Well, I wasn't defending it. I was saying it was bad.
I know, but that's where he was going. No, I know, but that's where he was going. And they have other issues. We were talking about the universal basic income. Hey, Norway started the experiment. They were going to go for 2 years. Well, guess what? Government is saying, you know what? We don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, it's not working. It's not working. You just can't give free. It's not free. It's not free. Somebody has to pay for it. We all pay for it one way or another. It might not come out of our wallets, but we still pay for it.
Yeah.
We pay for it through our liberties and our freedoms. And it'll be the loss of life. I mean, that's how we pay for it.
And we've seen that. I mean, we've seen that in certain areas. I mean, we do know that things are getting that bad. You know, they talk about that there's not that much poverty in America, but there is that much poverty in America. And it's not just in the city. It's not just in the inner cities. It's not just there at all. It is also out, particularly like in the West Virginia areas and south, where we have some significant poverty. And it's just heart-wrenching that we should have such in this United States of America when we are so wealthy with natural resources. But, you know, the government has tied it all up, controlling it all, taking the land from ranchers and farmers and controlling it all, taking away independent industries and turning it over, making it more profitable, more just handing it over to big corporations. And it's significant in this country, unfortunately. And it's not just in the cities where they can't get a hold of things. It's also in the rural and south areas and other places in the nation. I'm just saying those because I have seen some of the ministries that are trying to reach out to those down there, and where they took away all the jobs. They just took them away. And they're living in poverty. I mean, it's just astounding what they're living in.
We became a wasteful nation.
We did.
And you know, we, as I said earlier in the show, we're a nation, we're corrupted. I remember when I first got in the gold and silver business, we used to kind of kid, and every once in a while somebody would, because we were in Arizona, somebody would call and say, hey, you know, do you sell any pesos and stuff? We said, why do you want a peso? Their government is so corrupt. You don't know what you're getting. And now it's
so now we're that way with our own, you know. Why would you want that?
But they're still very strong when it comes to the American Gold Eagle. It is still very there's a lot of regulations and so forth that keeps them pristine, and so I don't worry about, you know, but now we're that, but my point was now we're that nation of corruptness that we beat out all these other nations. You know, everyone accepts these third world nations and even the European nations as being corrupt, but that's one thing the United States was, you know, we were always the good guys. You know, we were truthful. We did things the right way. We did things the good way. And you can't say that anymore. And when I see France...
No, we do it.
Yeah, when I see Macron in D.C. kissing and hugging and shaking hands, and I'm thinking...
oh, my gosh.
I mean, it's just like, what does he want? They all know where their bread is buttered.
Let me read this. Let me read this to you. I know I've done it before. I know I've done it here on Power Talks. I do it a lot on CSC Talk Radio and when I do my speeches. But this is just the cycle of government, and really it's human nature. And I think we're seeing this cycle here in the United States, from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance. Remember when we had abundance in this nation? From abundance to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, and from dependence back into bondage. So is it any wonder that they want to get us all signed up to these entitlements and have control of the American people? And I think that verse is just so characteristic of what has happened here in the United States, the nature of man. You know, when we have abundance, we kind of sit. Yeah, well,
and that's what they count on.
Absolutely. Anyway, it made me think of that with what you were saying, and I had to pull that up and read it to you because I think it's just indicative of what's going on here. So.
And, you know, you hear all about the deep state. It's been going on for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And many times when the right, and it used to be religious groups that would push them underground. And we're at a point now where there's no religious groups to push them underground anymore. And, we have to have that new awakening, that coming back revival. And until we have that, and we get little blurts of it when we have some sort of a catastrophic event, but then after that's over, but many go back into their routine, and we don't get ahead. But we got a couple of callers.
We do. We have Neil in Missouri, and then we'll go to Kansas after Neil. Neil, how are you today?
Oh, doing all right. Just staying dry. It's raining down here. So
it's supposed to rain up here in a little bit.
Oh, is it? Yeah, yep. This deal with the corruption in the government you're talking about, one of the biggest problems we have, the people who are supposed to be the watchdogs, or the executive and the legislative branches, are the courts. And the judges of the courts have become so corrupt. I'm hoping that maybe some of these judges that Trump is appointing are going to change things maybe a little bit, because the appellate courts in this country, both federal and state, simply ignore what the lower court judges are doing and are supporting their corrupt activities. And it's just, you can't get the people I see being framed on all kinds of charges in civil suits. These judges are going for the big companies and the big corporations against the little people that are trying to defend themselves against corrupt business practices.
Hey, Neil. Remember when the Supreme Court ruled that a corporation is a person?
Right. It's an artificial person.
Yeah.
So they do have, artificial and real persons, and real persons pretty much don't exist anymore because everybody's become a corporate entity. And but the thing is, they've got all these corrupt business practices where they're loaning people. That's what caused the housing bubble back in 08, 09, was loaning money to people who they knew couldn't qualify. And they're doing it throughout the system now. They do it.
They're doing it now.
They do it at the stores. They do it at the car lots. They do it. Yeah, they're back doing it again in real estate. They're selling stuff to people who want stuff they can't afford, and they don't qualify for these loans. And then they get in trouble, and they wind up getting their wages garnished because they can't make their payments, and it just drives them into abject poverty. And that's what's being done. And a lot of it is due to corruption. And then when you go and you complain about it to the courts, claiming fraud 9 times out of 10, well, first of all, the people are so poor they can't afford an attorney. So they go to court, they're hauled into court, when they're going to get their wages garnished and all this kind of stuff, and they don't know how to defend themselves. And that's one of the biggest problems. And no attorney's going to take, there's just virtually zero attorneys who are going to take anything pro bono anymore. Unless it's a high-profile case that's going to get them millions of dollars for free advertising, they're not going to touch these poor people that are out here being jerked around by all these companies. But the court judges are just so corrupt anymore, and even the court clerks. It's almost impossible to get past the court clerks anymore. We've got court clerks in the state of Missouri issuing arrest warrants for people.
Oh, yeah.
Or what they claim to be arrest warrants, okay?
We're at the mercy of the clock. Neil, I have to let you go. Thank you so much for your input. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning, and Sherry from Kansas will be with us when we come back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we have heard you're listening to Power Talk with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning, and we're going to listen to Sherry in the morning. Sherry from Kansas. Sherry, how are you today?
Okay. I want to give a shout out to Neil. I always like it when he calls in because he sounds like a pretty sharp dude.
Yes, he is.
If he could educate us on the Bar Association, and if there's any way to get them out of our courts, I should like to hear that. Hey, I have a suggestion for Bernie Sanders. He should put in a bill.
Can you say it on air?
Be careful.
He should put in a bill to adjust federal salaries in comparison to if they had to get the same job with the same skills in the private sector. I remember your former co-host, Al Dask, he would often mention that, that those people are paid about twice of what they could actually earn in the private sector. And the other thing was there's a congressman I've heard a snippet from something he said in an interview lately. His name is Ken Buck. He's in his second term. He's at Washington, and I'm not sure what state he's from, but I don't think he's going to run again. But he's written a book called Draining the Swamp, and Beth, he would probably be a good one for you to get on because he exposes some corruption, and I bet he's not a real favorite person up there.
Yeah, probably not. Everybody's written a book on the swamp or on Donald Trump, knowing Donald Trump or about the swamp or the deep state. I mean, how many books are out there now?
Well, this guy is living it. I mean, he talks about the when you get up there, you have to. I think it was $30,000 just in dues to the Republican party part of the Congress up there. And then you have to pay for your seat. If you want to chair a committee or even be on a committee, you have to pay for that.
There's something wrong with that picture.
I always thought that they got these positions through tenure or experience.
You said his name?
No, they pay for it.
Sherry, you said his name was Ken Buck?
Ken Buck.
Okay.
And he's a former prosecutor, and he's been in Congress. This is his second term, but sounds like he's not going to go back, because I'll bet they're going to run somebody against him if he tries.
Oh, my.
You
okay.
know. All right, that's all I had. Thanks for... Bye.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate it.
There's a lot of things that they could do. I mean, number one, they could address the term limits. Number two, the way the campaign finances are given. I mean, that's what has to be restructured and eliminated. These lobbyists. I mean, there's a lot of things that they could take away very easily that would help, or perhaps change a little bit the degree of corruption. And
that sounds corrupted, in my opinion, in the first place. I mean, it sounds more like extortion. You've got to pay for this. If you're going to be here, you got to pay for this seat. You got to pay for that. And that's kind of...
they spend 50% of their time in D.C. on the phone drumming up money. 50% of their time is used calling to get funds.
I get all kinds of it in the email. I mean, it's just unreal.
No, I mean, these politicians.
That's what I'm talking about.
50% of their time, they're on the phone dialing for dollars. And, they do. They pay for their seats. And if they don't have the money, well, what they could do is they have to sit down and get it. I mean, they're given lists. That needs to stop. And I mean, so she's right. There's a lot of little things and they're big things, but it's not going to get done. They're not going to vote against their, term limits and so forth. Why can't that be done by an executive order?
Well, I don't like executive orders, but that's just me.
Well, there's a lot of executive orders that are being done on every administration level.
Oh,
why don't they do one that would address those problems?
Well,
to eliminate the corruption. Then maybe they could really get something done that's good for this country. But as long as you have those funds, as long as the money is involved, they anything.
Congress isn't going to vote themselves out of a job. They're not going to vote for term limits. They're career politicians.
Why can't that be done by an executive order?
Well, it'd be good. Put it to a vote with the people. What do you think would happen?
Yeah.
I think they'd be term limited pretty quick.
And if you want to drain the swamp, you got to take away what they're there for. What makes them the alligators? That's the money.
Take the money away.
Money supply.
Take the money away.
Yep.
I have a completely different topic here, if you don't mind, and then I'll let you get back to gold and silver, which is why we're here in the first place. But did you know gun defense is good for your health? You don't know that because the Center for Disease Control doesn't let you know that. It says, did you know that defensive gun use is happening more regularly in the United States than gun crimes? Probably not. And the reason is because the Center of Disease Control never publicized that. It says the agency sat on this information for years, unpublished. CDC study confirms there are nearly 2.5 million defensive gun use situations per year, a lot higher than 100,000, which is the lowball number leftists have been throwing around recently. It said this study was conducted on data collected from 1996, 97, and 98, and the question was part of the yearly behavioral risk factor surveillance system. Respondents, that's a mouthful, were asked this question during the last 12 months. Have you confronted another person with a firearm, even if you did not fire it, to protect yourself, your property, or someone else? And the study confirms that Florida State criminologist Gary Kleck has been saying for many years, based on his research, he estimated that the number was around 2.2 million a year, so he wasn't too far off. And the anti-gun lobby tried to write Kleck off as the unreliable source. Another fact the anti-gun lobby glosses over is that the majority of gun deaths are suicide, around 60%. Guns don't kill people, psychotic lunatics do, and the rest of us protect ourselves legally, apparently at least 2.5 million times a year. I thought that was interesting, that the CDC didn't want you to know that that gun defense, being defensive with your gun, is good for your health. But anyway,
well,
that was my...
No, it's very true, and I mentioned it on this program. I get it gives you the current death toll from January. Yeah, no. I don't follow this every day, but every one. Let's topics like this.
I'll look. Making sure your name's not there. Kind of like look at the old
I'm still here. I'm looking at the.
Oh, yay!
But they show every time someone just dies, and for why, and abortion is still the number one. There's 342,304 deaths from abortion. Little babies. Guns is way down on the list. Murder by gun so far this year is 3,603. Prescription drug overdose is more than that. Homicides are more than that. All drug abuse is more than that. Unintentional poisoning is more than that. Drunk driving is more than that. Now, suicide is 13,408. Since you mentioned suicide, and some of those would be the a gun, and they are up into. I think that's in the. Let's see. Well, it's not even in the top 10. Because then the number 2 after abortion is heart disease, cancer, tobacco, obesity, medical error. That's the frightening part. Medical errors, 78,822 deaths.
Yeah, I wrote an article on that years ago. Maybe it was Derry that wrote that. I just type them all out. He handwrites them, and I type them all out. But it was regarding that. You were more likely to die under medical care than you were not under medical care.
Yeah, and another thing is hospital-associated infection, 31,000. So much higher than one murder by gun and gun-related incidents.
And you gotta have gun control, because it's about the safety of our children. And Planned Parenthood is not. We're not going into a break. We are done for the day. You've been listening to Power Talks with Melanie and Beth Ann in the morning. Wishing you a great rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.